March 23rd, 2020. Joe here at Simple Life Show. Appreciate everybody for joining me today. I haven't done a video in the last few days, and I apologize about that. Been trying to gather my thoughts about a lot of this, and it's not just simply about the coronavirus, COVID-2, whatever you want to call it, the Chinese virus, Wuhan virus, whatever you want to call it at this point, it doesn't really matter. I have really been trying to kind of wrap my head around a lot of these things and what is really the most important thing to talk about. And it's kind of confusing right now because people are in a kind of a mode of panic. They're not exactly sure what to do. The governments are locking down a lot of different sectors of the economy, which is just a natural thing to do whenever there is a pandemic. Fact of the matter is we're not used to pandemics because we have been kind of lulled to sleep over the last few decades because we have not had to deal with a major outbreak, something that really takes over the globe in a very, very long time. So that is where we are at now. Of course, the totals on the coronavirus right now, 677 worldwide. Here in the U.S., we have 35,000 plus. And 400 plus deaths. This is obviously reaching an exponential curve right now. We have already passed that. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are not really paying attention to a lot of these stuff. Yeah, I understand that people are watching the news. They are trying to keep informed. I know many people are bored. They're getting depressed out there. There's so many things that need to be discussed and many things that are important at the heart of this whole matter. But I really wanted to talk today about the conspiracy theories or so-called conspiracy theories about where all of this is coming from. And we really have to start with China, obviously. And we can see here with China's number here, 81,496. And if we drill in on that, we see a death toll of 3,274. That has not really moved in the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks or so. And we have to kind of be asking ourselves, why is this not moving? Is China really doing what they should be doing? Or are they just not reporting the numbers? Or are they just reporting a small percentage of the numbers? Because if they just stopped altogether, then the whole world would take pause and they would kind of be asking, why is China not reporting? Or why are they just having no cases at all? And there's a lot of reports coming out from China. Of course, we know that China is a communist state, and they control their media very, very well. They control their propaganda. They ensure their citizens are not able to get on social media to get out any of the independent news voices that are still out there in China right now. And they are trying to let everyone know that this is not really the entire story that's been given to the American public. If you believe everything that you watch in the media or hear in the media, please be aware that even in this country, in the United States, we are supposedly free. We are not being given the entire story, but there are plenty of independent news sources out there that are trying to get the word out. So there is obviously an issue between China and the United States, Trump and the president of China, if that's what you want to call him, over this spat between who really started this. China is trying to convince not only their own population, but the population here in the United States that it was actually started by the U.S. military. And there might be some credibility to that, but there's also some credibility to the idea that this was actually started in a lab. It might have been started at the University of North Carolina, between the University of North Carolina and the lab in Wuhan, China. And we'll get into that in this show. It is going to be a longer show, and I am sorry about that, but there's just simply a lot to go over. There's a lot of studies that we need to look at, because it is very, very important. I'm going to put links to everything that I'm going to be talking about so you can take a look at this stuff yourself. It's very, very important that you understand that this COVID-19 virus is not like the flu. They have been telling us since the beginning that it's just like the flu. And if you know anything about the American propaganda system, that whenever there is a crisis or whenever information is supposedly leaked to the public, understand that we're probably only receiving 10% of what is actually going on. The other 9% is basically shoved underneath the carpet. It's under the ground. But there are plenty of people who are trying to get that information out there. And if they are letting us know that this is not like the flu and it is more dangerous than the flu, please understand it's 100 times worse. And we'll get into the reasons why it is 100 times worse. And the people who are evading the orders of the government and stuff like that, people who are calling the National Guard in as a form or a sign of martial law, it might very well be. We are probably seeing the beginnings of what could be the end of the United States as we know it. And the fact of the matter, even whether it's intentional or not, it could very well be something that was from China. That they've been working on this a long, long time. The U.S. and China combined have been working on this type of virus for a long time. It is not directly from bats. It is, but it's not. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. Interestingly, that Danny DeVito put out a video about staying at home. We know that New York is on basically lockdown. It's been that way for the last week or so. Other countries and other cities are going on lockdown as well. The National Guard has been called out to many of these towns or states to aid not only the medical, the medical for medical purposes, but also to keep people inside their homes. It is going to get worse and worse and worse. And if you didn't already know, the Democrats have been an obstacle to a lot of the funding that not only the people need, but also the corporations, and not so much the corporations, but a lot of the small businesses out there, which make up the majority of the businesses. The people that run these small businesses and small to medium-sized businesses, they are suffering because they simply cannot get back to work because there's no way, there's no staff there. People can't go out of their homes. It's the economy is another. This is going through the economy just like another virus. It's attacking us on so many different levels. Here's Danny DeVito, in his infinite wisdom, obviously telling people in New York to stay home.
All over the state of New York, stay home. I mean, everybody. I mean, we got this virus, this pandemic, and young people can get it, and they can transmit it to old people. And the next thing you know, I'm out of there. So Governor Cuomo asked me to ask you, please do us a favor, all of us, and stay home, not spread this virus around. Thank you. Watch a little TV, why don't you?
Yeah, so we need to stay home and watch some TV. No, what we need to be doing is that we need to stay informed on what is exactly going on here, specifically with this virus. I think there is too much. Understandably, there is too much focus on the economy. The economy is going to collapse, whether we like it or not. The economy has been collapsing for the last decade. We just haven't really been seeing it for what it really is. The stock market has been artificially propped up for a long, long time. It is overblown, and it needs to collapse. And many of the best minds out there have been telling us this for a long time, trying to prepare us, trying to warn us about what's going to happen, saying, hey, you need to prepare for this stuff. You need to take appropriate measures and precautions on what is going to be happening in this country over the next few months, in the next few years. Many are saying could last 18 months. Just forget about the numbers. Forget about the economic numbers and how this is going to affect us. It's going to be horrible. There's a lot of people out there saying, this is just going to pass over and we'll get over this in a matter of a few months. We will not. I don't want to be a doomsayer. I don't want to be a prophet. But I can tell you this, that I pay attention to what's going on. I look at all the information from all different types of sources, and I try to put together the best way I can so I can tell you what I believe is going to happen. And it doesn't take a rocket engineer, rocket science, or a prophet to tell you that it's going to get worse and worse. Many people especially during spring break. And we've seen this in Florida and other areas. Of course, Miami is now another epicenter of an outbreak. I wonder how that started. We have to focus on this COVID-19 virus, and we need to stop comparing it to the flu. This is a completely different monster altogether. Yes, is it part of the coronavirus family? Yes, it is. But did it evolve from the coronavirus family? No, it did not. There's plenty of studies that have been going on for the last decade or more about this ACE2 inhibitor and how the virus actually spreads and how it actually invades the human genome and the cells in the human body. And there's a lot of conflicting information out there, especially for the people that want to post, I guess, so-called pseudoscience journals where they are trying to make the argument that this virus evolved within bats. And that's how it formed, and that's how it got into the human population. And we will discuss here in the next few minutes or so why this isn't possible, why this zoonotic passing does not happen as fast as you think it does. It has to go through several types of different phases, and a lot of people aren't aware of that, and how these types of viruses actually, especially ones that are novel like this one, that seems like they don't have any kind of evolutionary progeny. And we are seeing that. We are learning that over the last few weeks or so. And the types of studies that have been done over the past few decades with this type of virus are letting us know that, yes, this was engineered in a lab one way or the other. We've been trying to do this for decades. We have been messing with these coronaviruses. We have been messing with the coronaviruses. We've also been messing with HIV. And coincidentally enough, now we have a virus that has HIV markers on it. Coincidentally enough, the odds that this could have naturally evolved are astronomical. It's just almost not even possible. I guess anything's possible. Well, we have to look at what's the most probable thing that has happened. Now, this whole idea that this whole spat between China and Trump and trying to point the fingers over where this actually came from is leading us in the direction of China, really, because they are going into full propaganda mode. They've been doing that for weeks now. And there are a lot of independent journalists who are kind of tired of it. They want to get to the bottom of it. And we're going to play here a couple videos about what is going on, whether China is lying about this whole thing or not.
Days ago, China reported 0 new CCP virus or coronavirus infections for the first time. But netizens in Taiwan are questioning the official numbers. One netizen asked in an online forum how to verify that the pandemic in China is really under control. In the online discussions, 3 criteria stood out. One is whether North Korea and Russia have reopened their borders with China. One comment said that would mean the outbreak in China is really under control because dictators know dictators best. North Korea was the first country to close its border with China. Russia followed soon after, closing its border 1 week later. The borders remain closed. The 2 other criteria are whether Chinese elementary and middle schools are open and whether China's most important annual political meetings will still go ahead. The political meetings, called 2 sessions, are postponed, and only some schools in China are open. A netizen said if any of these criteria are missing, the pandemic inside China hasn't really been resolved. Earlier this week, Chinese state media were saying medical teams from outside Wuhan left there as the pandemic eased. Not all of them left, and some are asked to go back. 2 medical assistant teams from another province have been helping in Wuhan for some time. Both received an emergency notice in the morning of March 17th, asking them to go to other hospitals in the city. On March 9th.
So we see that in China, they are asking for people to come back and help with the crisis. Now, this isn't being reported in the news media. The fact of the matter is that almost nothing from China is being reported in the news media. Why is that? The reason is because China owns us. If you haven't figured that out by now, please understand that the vast majority of corporations and different types of business interest in this country are directly tied with China. We actually receive over 95% of a lot of our medical supplies from China. We receive a lot of our pharmaceuticals from China. And we are in this war right now of propaganda. One side is lying to their citizens just as much as one side is lying to their citizens. And it's up to us, the Americans of the free republic, to do our own research and to have our own due diligence, to understand that we are being lied to just as much as the Chinese people are being lied to on their end as well. Anytime there is a mass chaos, not so much a pandemic, but just mass chaos, propaganda will flow. And one side will be pointing the fingers on the other. We are still pointing fingers over 9/11. There are still plenty of people talking about 9/11, as well as all other types of chaotic and crisis, linked events throughout our history. But this is just the most recent, and it is going to be the most disastrous. It is going to cause a worldwide depression. If the news media is already talking about a depression, please understand that we are already in the midst of a depression. It is no longer going to be a recession or even a bad recession. It is going to be an absolute depression. I would highly recommend stocking up now. Do what you can. I know there are limitations on what you can buy because of the hoarding, because of the profiteering that people are doing right now. They are only interested in their own welfare, and that's understandable at this time because it doesn't seem like the government really cares about the people, as we have seen yesterday with the Democrats blocking a lot of the most needed aid and help, not only for the American population, but a lot of the small businesses as well. So we already see the U.S. really doesn't know what it's doing. The testing is not really doing as much as it should be doing. We are not getting the testing supplies out as fast as we can. And everyone is simply too busy pointing the fingers back and forth, saying Trump is bad and Trump was lying to the American public. I think that Trump just didn't have the right information. Was there some sort of information, I guess, leaking, the slowing of information, if there's a best way to put that? Yeah, probably. You know what I mean? If the American public knew everything all at once, our heads would probably explode. But I think it's really important to get to the heart of the matter. There was a recent report here. Now, I want to get to the Democrats are actually they're more concerned about saving face with China and not spreading a lot of the false propaganda that China is responsible for all this. Because I believe that not only China is responsible for it, but the U.S. is responsible for this as well. And we will get into that in a little bit. And here's a video of the saving face video from another typical Democrat trying to convince everyone to not blame China for any of this.
Inflammatory China bashing. Did this virus originate in China? Yes. But Mr. President, that does not excuse your weeks and weeks of tweeting lies and misinformation about the virus, while the leaders of other nations were taking steps to make sure their populations could be safe. The fact that the virus originated in China does not excuse the massive missteps that have led to the United States being so far behind other nations.
So this really just kind of leads us into, like I said, a whole bunch of finger pointing that's really not going to do any good at this point. The virus is already out. The virility of this, the viral spread of this virus cannot be stopped at this point. The fact of the matter is this does not spread like the flu does. Some are saying that this virus actually has an R0 factor of 4 and not 2.5 like they were saying before. That it has had an R0 factor of 4 the whole entire time. That is not simply spread by eating bats. Yeah, that's not good for you. But the zoonotical approach, the zoonotical spread of the virus from animal to human is not as viral as you would like to believe, or as what they are trying to tell you or convince you otherwise of. That it does take several steps, and it takes a long time to actually reach those types of levels, which leads a lot of people to believe, yes, that the spike proteins that we're seeing, the furin-like cleavage sites on this type of virus, are leading a lot of people to conclude that, yes, this has the markings of an evolved virus, but evolved in a lab. And that is something that is very dangerous, because there's a lot of dangerous things that are part of this virus that you may not be aware of. First, we need to get into some independent media that's coming directly from China. People who are actually taking the leap and trying to find the right information on what's really going on. And this one comes out, and this has to do with the actual funeral homes in the Chinese in Wuhan and other Chinese provinces that are simply overloaded right now with new deaths.
How many people have died since the coronavirus outbreak began in China? Really? What's the true situation in Wuhan? One source of information is funeral homes in Wuhan. Our reporter Undercover called them up, and the numbers they disclose are heart-wrenching.
你要是听真话还是听假话？我现在我本人都要快崩溃了。我们现在每天的运息量和火化量是平时的4到5倍。
This is an official from a government-owned funeral home in Wuhan, the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak. NTD distorted the voice to protect the official's identity. The person was talking to an NTD reporter who posed as a member of China's central government. The funeral home official says the number of bodies they received skyrocketed in recent weeks, peaking at 127 on February 3rd. But he said that's not the number being recorded officially.
我昨天总共接运的遗体127个，烧掉了116个。OK。然后确诊数，确诊数是8个。我这是全部有死亡证书在我手上的。
Only about 6% of the deaths are recorded as confirmed cases. If other funeral homes in Wuhan are in the same situation, where only 6% of the deaths are counted officially as part of the coronavirus death toll, the real number of lives claimed by the virus could be over 10,000. The official says that many of the patients weren't even able to be treated before passing away.
38%是医院接来的。61%是在家里死亡的。所以说这个就医的情况很不好，前几天。对。你想想，60%都在家里死的。
The person says local officials tell them to get rid of the bodies within an hour and a half, but because there are so many bodies, the funeral homes are stretched to their limit.
我真的是承受不了了。我昨天跟我的局长说，我说我这哪天疯了，我自己要去跳楼了。我说你给我下的这些任务，我真完成不了。武汉市这帮狗官把这个城市管理的一塌糊涂。
So we can see in that video that there are plenty of people out there that are trying to get to the bottom of this whole, all the lies that are simply coming from China right now, the propaganda, the state-controlled media that's coming from China right now that is trying to convince the world that they are not the epicenter of this entire thing. They are denying it. But the people that are in China, the people that are the frontline workers that are still struggling with this thing, are telling us, they're trying to tell us that it's getting worse and worse in Wuhan. Here's another one. It's kind of disturbing, but China is there's a report coming out of China that they are actually cremating bodies of patients that are still alive. Now, we did hear that from North Korea, they are just shooting people. I don't know exactly how many people they have shot over in North Korea, but I'm assuming that it's probably more than one. So here is a report about the cremation of live patients.
Social media video, a woman describes her terrifying experience inside a Chinese hospital. She says she witnessed critically ill coronavirus patients being sent away for cremation while they're still alive. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
A Wuhan hospital is sending coronavirus patients for cremation while they're still alive. That's according to a woman in a video that's circulating on social media. Speaking in a Wuhan dialect, the woman describes how she witnessed the patient next door being sealed up in body bags. This video could not be independently verified. She goes on to say the man was wrapped in 4 body bags and then put into a box-like device. The man was in his 70s and critically ill. He was in room number 18, the ward next door to her. The woman says she witnessed several cases. She says another old man in the hospital was also cremated before he passed away. After the patients are sent away in the box-like device, the woman says doctors then tell the patients' relatives that their loved ones have passed away. She didn't clarify what the box-like.
So that is a very disturbing video that is coming directly out of China. Now, you have to wonder why they are cremating these people. Why are they doing that? It's simple. Because they're running out of beds. They are running out of medical supplies. They are running out of doctors. That's why they're having to ship in more doctors into Wuhan, China, because they simply have too many patients to deal with. Yet they are telling the world that everything is under control. They're telling everyone that the population is going back to work. But people are still falling down and dying. This is not the flu. This was engineered over many, many years. It wasn't something that was done overnight. So it's really easy to make the argument, no, this wasn't made in a lab specifically. No, it was engineered over time through so many different universities, through the University of Harvard, through the University of North Carolina, through the Level 4 lab in Wuhan. This was something that was done. And of course, people like Hillary Clinton, who I don't believe is, an American patriot, along with a lot of these traitors on the Democrat side that are trying to focus on trying to pat the head of China and trying to stoke the fears or assuage the fears of the American population that are now focusing on the Chinese communist regime. She says here, the president is turning to racist rhetoric to distract from his failures to take the coronavirus seriously early on, making tests widely available and adequately prepare the country for a period of crisis. Don't fall for it. Don't let your friends and family fall for it. Of course, China News says former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on Wednesday critiqued President Donald Trump's recent usage of Chinese virus to refer to COVID-19 as racist rhetoric, which is an attempt to eclipse his poor response in curbing the virus outbreak. We are focusing on the wrong things in this country. We're focusing on pointing the fingers. Yes, did this originate in China? Yes, it did. But did it evolve directly from a bat that was eaten or something like that? No, it wasn't. There's plenty of evidence that will convince you that it wasn't. Now, there's a handful of articles that will try to convince you that this was not made in a lab, that it would naturally evolved in nature. But there is simply not enough evidence to prove that. Now, I was taken in by this because I do not want to believe that I live in a world that they are messing with a lot of these things that could, take out almost the entire population of a country, if not a good percentage of the world. Idris Elba, who who's starred in many videos, many movies here recently, including the Mountain Between Us, a call for survival. If you have actually seen that, many survival movies are very popular right now, as well as pandemic movies. We have to watch these things because we have to escape in some way or another. But Idris Elba, I believe, has lost all credibility because he has made a video, and this is kind of a poor quality video, and I apologize about that. But I think it's really important that you understand what these celebrities are talking about. Idris Elba is basically saying that this whole COVID-19 virus is meant to kill humanity, and we deserve it. This is getting disgusting. I'll let you watch it.
Our world. And, you know, it's no surprise that our world is reacting to the human race. It's no surprise that a virus has been created that is going to slow us down and ultimately make us think differently about our world and ourselves. That's like a real, for me, that's a standout thing that's very obvious, that this is almost like the world's cry out to like, hey, you're kicking me, you know, and what you're doing is not good. So I'll get rid of you, as any organism would do, is try and get rid of an infection. And maybe this is it for the world.
So if you remember in the movie, the Mountains Between Us, or The Mountain Between Us, he plays a doctor, a very brilliant doctor, but he doesn't sound very brilliant in this video clip. He is basically saying that this virus is a natural response to humanity simply existing. Now, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that Mother Nature does fight back against the things that we do. Now, we have a problem with raping, and I don't like to use that word lightly, but we do. We are raping the world's natural resources. But this isn't something that is about climate change or anything like that, because I don't want to go down that road right now because it's not important. Everything has screeched to a halt. But I think Idris Elba really needs to have a better understanding of where this virus comes from. And if we have a better understanding of where this virus comes from, then we will understand that the whole finger pointing thing is just, it's nonsense. Yes, we do need to understand where it comes from. But right now we need to deal with the fallout and understand where we are going first. Going to the red state, Laura Ingram keeps bashing Beijing, questions why we should ever cooperate with the Chi-Coms. Again, now that's Chinese communications. We all know that Chinese communications are on the fritz right now. They're not really telling us much. They have thrown out our reporters, and we simply can't get enough information. We are getting some sort of idea that the information coming out of Beijing is completely corrupt. It is not truthful in any way, because they are trying to save face. They're trying to save their own economy as well, along with where all this came from. If you do remember the lab, and all the scientists that were working on this, they were ordered by the government to destroy all that information that they were working on, destroy all their research. Why did the government tell them to do that? This is common knowledge at this point, but we keep forgetting about it. We keep forgetting about where all these breadcrumbs actually go, because they keep getting swept under the rug by a lot of alternate information coming from our own propaganda machine in the United States. You see how confusing this gets? Because it's confusion warfare. It's meant to confuse the population into just throwing up their hands in the air and saying, I don't care where it came from. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to watch a movie and sit in my house and be quarantined. And pretty soon I'll have cabin fever and I'll probably act out violently. And that's another problem that we're going to encounter with this quarantine, this lockdown that we're going through right now. People are going to start losing their minds. But we'll have to deal with that when that happens. Moving on, there's a lot of stuff to get to. This is also something that's really important, kind of interesting here. There's a lot of people that are giving away money on Twitter. This is from Bill Pult. I will be giving away a major amount of money tomorrow, Sunday. Turning your notifications on. I'll be sending out money to many people who do tomorrow. And of course, we see a lot of these responses here. A lot of people are starting to give away money too, in return for certain things that they can do for them as well. Maybe a lot of this stuff is happening because Congress is not acting. Congress needs to act. Yes, the economy is going to implode either way. We have been going down this road for a long time. There is no recovery to this. There's this black swan that has happened with this coronavirus, and I would consider it an intentional black swan. We're not going to recover from it. It's going to take many years to recover from this. Did we recover from the Great Depression? Yes, we did. Through going to war with World War II, and some could say that is what lifted us out of that depression. What are we going to do now? I don't know. That's going to be that's going to be yet to be seen. I would recommend that people learn how to grow food. I would recommend people learn how to live a minimalist lifestyle. We are going to be going down a very, very hard road over the next few months, and people are not seeing it for what they is. They are still in a state of denial. They are still calling this just another flu. It is not a flu. So this was from USA Today from a couple days ago. USA Today analysis: Americans' coronavirus curve may be at its most dangerous point. Yes, we have already reached the asymptote. We have already reached exponential the curve here, at least in the United States, and well as other countries such as Italy, the UK, Australia, all these other countries that are just exploding. This is not something that happens with a virus that is simply like the flu. This was intended to be the most viral flu or most viral virus that's ever been introduced into the human population. This does not happen naturally, and that's my whole point with this. The viral part of this virus was intended because of the spike proteins that were so-called evolved, and that they might have evolved, but we've been working on it for a very long time in all different types of labs between the UNC Wuhan the Wuhan lab, possibly even Harvard as well. So many different scientists have been working on this. So yeah, we have already reached that curve, and it's just going to continue to get worse. And just because someone recovers from this virus doesn't mean that they're out of the woods yet, and we'll get into that as well. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit longer video, so just kind of stick with me on this. This is from the Rolling Stone. DOJ wants to suspend certain constitutional rights during coronavirus emergency. And the Department of Justice has secretly asked Congress for the ability to detain arrested people indefinitely, in addition to other powers that one expert called terrifying. This reminds me of basically the Patriot Act on steroids. Of course, that was passed in the secret in the middle of the night, I guess at midnight. I think it was on New Year's Eve or something like that, or Christmas, one of those holidays, where it was passed, and no one really even knew anything about it. We're going to see more of that. We're going to see more secret types of legislations that's going to be passed that will suspend a lot of your constitutional rights, that will call up more guard troops, more military groups to detain people, to make sure you stay in your home. They understand something that you don't. They have been briefed on how dangerous this virus is. They know something, and we're going to get into what they know here in the next few minutes. So that is something to be wary of as well. Italy's coronavirus death toll feeds fear for what lies ahead of Europe and in the U.S. Most people, experts, are calling the U.S. the next Italy, but it doesn't really matter at this point. It's going to spread everywhere. The R0 factor is through the roof. Please understand that this is a virus that was intended to spread like napalm everywhere. This is not something that's naturally occurred in nature. We have never seen anything like this. Yes, we can say this was the Spanish flu, but understand that during the Spanish flu in 1918, we didn't have the type of technology that we do have right now. They didn't have the type of testing that we have right now, or the type of quarantine methods, or the masks and the advanced systems and medical systems that we do right now. We are still losing the war on this COVID-19. That is how powerful it is. Stop saying it's the flu, or stop even comparing it to the Spanish flu. It's very frustrating. It really is. When you start to really understand that this was, even if it was an accident, but the sheer disregard of human life and the protection of human safety, when we are messing with these viruses, when we are mutating them in the lab, when we are trying to use the coronaviruses in the labs for other purposes such as HIV treatments and so forth. Why do you think they were using HIV types of medications on the coronavirus? Why do you think that is? Because they already knew that there was a spike protein, or there was an actual there was actually a protein cleavage site that had the HIV virus in it. And we will get to that. We will get to some of the horrible information coming up. And like I said, I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. I'm not trying to be someone that's trying to get you scared. But this is not something to mess around with. If you can stay home, stay home, because we do not understand what the long-term implications of getting this COVID-19 virus is. Yes, for some people do not really exhibit a lot of symptoms and they recover just fine. But that doesn't mean there isn't damage, nerve damage, and also molecular and genome type of gene DNA damage that's actually being done to their body as this virus stays in there and continues to do all kinds of damage. This was kind of more morbid type of information coming out of Mother Jones. The coronavirus is making the case for abortion via telemedicine. I understand that abortion is really important for a lot of people. I understand that killing your baby is very important for a lot of people, but we need to stop with all of this stuff. I know that I recently did a report on the website of simpleliferemedy.org where there was a recent report coming out of the New York Health where they were talking about how people should be having sex, including such things as rim jobs and fecal matter and stuff like that, and just kind of really gross stuff. We need to be calm, and obviously, if you're bored, sex obviously plays a huge role in that as well. But putting abortion as something that is really necessary right now. I mean, so many people are going to end up dying because of this. I know that a lot of people are saying, well, it's only like 10,000 people or 15,000 people worldwide. That is going to continue to grow. This virus was made to do that, to cause long-term virility inside of the human population. Along those same lines, this is from Vice here. Let me just go ahead and skip all this stuff. I want to get to the actual story here. You may have not heard this, but as hospitals prepare for COVID-19, life-saving trans surgeries are delayed. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're going to have to put off your trans surgeries, people. You're going to have to put these off, and you're going to have to learn how to deal right now without having your transition surgeries because it's not necessary. I'm sorry. I'm just saying it's not necessary. We need to stop talking about these things. We need to stop trying to pretend like these things are absolutely necessary in the midst of this horrible pandemic that is wreaking havoc on this entire planet. It's only going to get worse. This is absolutely ridiculous. There's been so many other types of publications that have picked up on this story and that are sandblasting Vice for actually having the audacity to put this type of story out there. But we see this from a lot of these left-leaning publications. And, like I said, if you've been listening to me for any period of time, you'll know that I don't really stay on one side or the other. But this is, when you see snakes like this, it just gets underneath my skin. We need to be focusing on what really matters, and that's making sure that people have the ventilators they need, making sure the health professionals have the mask that they need. We need to talk about where this comes from and where we're going. What are the long-term effects of this virus inside of us? And we need to stop worrying about the things that don't matter. Please note that I haven't heard too much about gender pronouns lately. Now, there's plenty of people out there that are still talking about it, but I don't see it too much in the news. We're not really paying too much attention to it, which leads me to believe that it's not very important. It's really kind of interesting that when we're in a type of situation where our own lives might be at risk, we really tend to really focus on the things that really matter. And I think that we need to be focusing on things that really matter all the time. It's just like during Christmas. Oh, well, it's time to really care about people. Valentine's Day is really time to really care about people. We take these holidays, right, where we can actually start acting human towards each other. And then every other day we just forget about humanity and we just think about ourselves. I think the only good thing that's going to come out of this pandemic is that it's going to open our eyes to multiple things. It's going to open our eyes to how weak the economy is, how manipulated our economic and monetary system is. number one, but it's also going to open up our eyes to how we should act as humans towards each other and how we should take another turn. I told you in the last video there's going to be a lot of things on the table. There's going to be a lot of ideologies at play, but also there's also going to be an awakening of the human spirit as well. At least I hope there would be, especially if this thing gets worse, which it will. There is no question that it will get worse. People will continue to lose their jobs. The economy will continue to get worse. I want to be a realist about this. I just want to give the information out there so you know what to expect coming up over the next few months. You'll also know that if you've listened to me for any period of time, that my wife and I have already bought a farm, a mini farm, about 3 acres, and we're going to be moving there the next few months. And it's the best time to do so because I can see food shortages being a thing as well in the future as well, especially entering into a depression. The whole types of the way that we transport food and the logistics of all that, not just, items of technology and other types of stuff, but also food as well. That's going to run into some issues as well. And when that happens, when the food stops flowing as much as it is right now, you will see people turn into animals. You will see people at their worst. And we need to prepare for that type of stuff wherever you live. I understand that not everyone can actually go out there and build their own farm. It's going to be hard enough for us. I mean, we're not spring chickens either. But this is something that really has to be done. And I want to be talking about more of this going forward, especially when we get out to our farm, because I want to give out more information about how to live a minimalist life and how to live a more spiritual life and how to live a life more close to your creator and stop living such a worldly life, because it does not give you anything. It does not feed your soul. It does not feed your mind. It doesn't feed anything. It's empty. It's void. This world has sold you down the river. It sold you an empty vessel. And it's time that we all start waking up to a lot of this stuff. If this pandemic does anything, it will be that. Now let's get on to what I really wanted to be talking about, is that there was a Nature magazine that I actually talked about in one of my previous videos. COVID-19 definitely didn't come from a lab. China propaganda. So we're going to be talking about why this. Now, this is a very long article. Okay, and I'm going to be putting a link back to it. I want everyone to read this. If you made it this far, please click the link and read about this after I finish this report. So it starts here. China bought off the head of Harvard's chemistry department. You don't think they could buy off run-of-the-mill research scientists scrambling for tenure and funding and publication? It's absolutely horrific that so many of the scientists and researchers are taking part in what's really clearly a disinformation campaign orchestrated by the Chinese Communist Party and willfully spreading a smokescreen around something that's already killed thousands and is projected to kill millions more across the planet. We don't even know how many people are actually dead in China because they're not letting us know. And while the mainstream corporate media mindlessly regurgitates claims from the Chinese government that are falsifiable with the simplest of Google searches, allowing the public to be lulled to a false state of security and complacency. I am going to stop that here. I'm going to be moving over to another article here. And this whole article is about, actually, I'm going to be moving over to this one, logistical and technical exploration onto the origins of the Wuhan strain. This is a long, long article. I did highlight some of the major parts, but I want you to click this link after I am done, and I want you to read this entire thing. It is going to scare you if what I am telling you right now doesn't scare you already. This report is a production of collaboration between retired professional scientists with dozen peer-reviewed publications and 30 years of experience in genomic sequencing and analysis, who worked at the Theoretical Biological Division at Los Alamos National Laboratory and later helped design several ubiquitous bioinformatic software tools, as well as a former NSA counterterrorism analyst. It considers whether the Wuhan strain coronavirus, or as we know, COVID-19, is the result of naturally emergent mutations, against the possibility that it may be bioengineered strain, directly altered by genetic manipulation, subject to artificially guided evolutionary selection. This is what we need to pay attention to. The guided manipulation subject to artificially guided evolutionary selection. I know that's a mouthful, but that's basically what they're saying, is they're taking certain strains of SARS and they're passing it through animals like ferrets, and they're getting new mutations, and they're trying to actually create another type of coronavirus strain that is viral. Why are they doing this? That is a good question. Are they using the coronavirus for other types of therapeutic things? Or are they using it to test certain types of other therapeutics? That is the main question. A lot of these labs are doing stuff like this. But we have also seen time and time again throughout history, these labs are not secure, especially in China. They have had so many outbreaks of viruses, especially those in 1977 that passed throughout Russia. If you don't know anything about that, look that up. They're not talking about that in the news, but it's looking directly like this again. Most likely released in the public by accident, since China's rate of occupational accidents is about 10 times higher than America's and sometimes 20 times more than Europe's. The only other regions with the high-level virology labs. It's really, because I understand that this Wuhan lab was only a matter of a few miles away from this so-called meat market. It's all propaganda, raising the odds of an accidental release. Researchers from China's only BSL-4 lab in Wuhan were reported to have particularly sloppy field research methods, being both bled and peed on by local bats that host coronaviruses remarkably similar to the Wuhan strain COVID-19. Please stay with me. And they've also been reported to smuggle used research animals outside of their labs, selling them for cash on the streets. Perhaps unsurprisingly, in mid-February, the Chinese Ministry of Science sent out a directive to all its labs emphasizing the importance of carefully handling bioinfectious agents and alluding to slack oversight and past lapses, even mentioning coronavirus specifically. Remember when I was talking about where the Chinese government basically told them to destroy everything? Because they knew that this BSL-4 labs that they were running, they weren't running in the best way possible. They knew exactly what happened. They knew that it got out one way or the other. When we say bioweapon, we mean that it's intentional. Now, it could have not been intentional. It could have been just an accident. They could have been working. Now, they've been working on this type of stuff, especially here in the United States. We had a mandatorium. We had a ban on this type of research, where we were messing with coronaviruses and how they actually went into human types of populations. We had a ban on that, on the types of functions that they used. But this ban was released just a few years ago, coincidentally enough, after the UNC lab was working with the BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. What a coincidence. Given that this outbreak was said to begin in late December, when most of the bat species in the region are hibernating. They are hibernating at this point. There would have not been any type of contact, and the Chinese horseshoe bat's habitat covers an enormous swath of the region, containing scores of cities and hundreds of millions of people. In fact, that this Wuhan strain of coronavirus, denoted as COVID-19, emerged in close proximity to the only BSL-4 virology lab in China, which in turn was staffed with at least two Chinese scientists, Zhenghai Shi and Xingyi Gi. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. Both virologists who had previously worked at an American lab, UNC lab, which had already bioengineered an incredibly virulent strain of bat coronavirus. But a lot of people didn't know about that. The accidental release of bioengineered virus from the Wuhan virology lab cannot be automatically discounted, especially when the Wuhan strain's unnatural genomic signals are considered. It doesn't stop there. It just keeps going. Remember when this report came out? This was directly from a Chinese scientist in Wuhan. They said in summary, somebody was entangled with the evolution of 2009 novel coronavirus. In addition to origins of natural recombination and intermediate host. Remember what I was saying about ferrets? Ferrets have been used so much in laboratories because their respiratory system and how it responds to certain viruses directly mimic humans. That's why they use ferrets, because of how their respiratory system and their lungs and how they're put together directly mimic how humans would react to certain viruses. The killer coronavirus probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan, they conclude there. In a predictable turn, that article has been removed. We already know that, and both researchers have since deleted their profiles off the ResearchGate site completely. Big surprise. Furthering the appearance of a cover-up back on January 2nd, the Wuhan Institute of Virology director sent out a memo forbidding discussion of an unknown pneumonia in Wuhan. There was so many different types of posts back from December from so-called scientists and doctors that were directly involved in this research saying, hey, maybe you need to go get the flu shot. We need to focus on the flu right now. Why were they doing that? Right after all this stuff was covered up. Yeah, it was just a coincidence. After ordering the destruction of all related lab materials a day earlier, making abundantly clear that the Chinese government knew about this outbreak long before they took any steps to contain it. It was already gone. This virus was made to go like napalm over everywhere. Wuhan, China is still under siege. In fact, all of China is under siege. They are not letting us know what's going on. The borders are still closed. Russia knows what's going on. North Korea knows what's going on. That's why they haven't opened up their borders either. They don't believe anything coming out of China either. These propaganda efforts have been bolstered by possible collusion from American scientists, some of which is detailed below. We'll get to that. But also, most notably, Peter Daszak, who had been publishing papers on coronavirus alongside these primary Chinese persons of interest. Those two people were talked about. So this is very interesting. Perhaps most notably, Daszak is listed as a co-author of the paper first documenting the isolation of a coronavirus from a bat. This was a long time ago, too. And let's look at that one. So this was back 2013. That was 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. Isolation and characterization of a bat SARS-like coronavirus that uses the ACE2 receptor. Please understand the most important thing to remember is this ACE2 receptor, because that is what allows this virus to spread like wildfire in the human population. It's not so much spread between other species, but we have seen that with dogs and cats and it just goes everywhere. It doesn't matter. It would have to evolve. Please understand, it would have to evolve to go into other species, but it's not doing that. It's not. It's already perfectly evolved. It's already a perfectly evolved virus that just showed up out of nowhere. Coincidence, right? That's BS. Please understand, that's BS. Let me see here. Okay, so one moment. Yeah, I think I just lost that article, and I'm not going to start this live feed. I'm going to actually go back to it. Just 1 second. Deal with me for 1 second. Here we go. I think this is it. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's go back to where we were. This is very important. Please stick with me on this. This is very, very important. These propaganda efforts have been bolstered by possible collusion. We already talked about that from the bats, and it targets the ACE2 receptor. Okay. That's a type of enzyme that it's parts of our cells, that it's receptor that helps the virus enter the cell. Okay, just like COVID-19, research done in the Wuhan lab, virology lab, and supervised by the Xinghai Shi, and led by second suspect, Chinese researcher, he will meet below. At best, Daszak is perhaps acting an unwitting agent of the Chinese government, but regards holds enormous conflict of interest. And if nothing else, is wildly irresponsible to speak out against the possibility that this virus got out of lab and that a natural origin has not been conclusively demonstrated. Daszak's statements in the Lancet is either incompetence or it is meant to be a smokescreen for the wanton hubris and greed that have been fueled the gain of function research. That is what I'm talking about, the gain of function. How does the virus gain entry into the actual cell? And how was this evolved? Was it evolved, or was it actually evolved in a lab? That is the question, and that is where everything is leading to. That it wasn't engineered so much as it was evolved in a lab. So that's where they are telling the truth, but they are not telling the truth. They are giving you part of the story just to keep you in the dark. Understand that is how propaganda continuously happens. They give you a shred of truth, and they allow you to make your own type of conclusions on that, which always leads to, yeah, I guess they're right. I'm just going to move on. But we all know the journalists are just, kind of regurgitating everything from the Chinese government. We're the lapdogs of China, and we always try to protect because we have so much financial interest in China. But they are not allowing any information out either. Okay, so this is very important. When a virus manages to affect a new species of host, it is known as a zoonotic jump. This is very important, the zoonotic jump. This is not something that people talk about because they don't want you to know about this kind of stuff, but it's something you need to know about. The ACE2 site, the gain of function research that's been going on for decades, and the zoonotic jump, a process that generally takes a month or if not even years to complete. The first stage is when a virus infects one individual and a new host, which is typically a dead end the first time it happens, since there is no way for the virus to be adapted to a different species biology. Please understand that if this was actually happening the way they said it was going to happen, it would have been a dead end the first couple times. And it would take months, if not years, for it actually gain hold in the human population. The second stage of zoonotic jump is when the virus manages to move from the first new host into more hosts of the new species, which results in some temporary transmission in a localized area. These are known as endemics. They are just in the general population, and they generally fizzle out over time. First few times they happen as the virus adapts to its new host species. And mutations. We talked about mutations in the last video. This thing is mutating over time. And mutations win or lose the survival battle. The final stage, the only time a zoonotic jump is considered complete, is when there's sustained host-to-host transmission in new species. We're seeing that right from the jump. We saw that right from the jump when it hit the Wuhan, China. It spread like wildfire. This was engineered. This was an evolved, engineered lab disease that we've been working on for decades. This zoonotic jump have some predictable characteristics. The primary one is the adapting to a new host inevitably requires mutations that weren't optimal in the old host. And so the virus gets weakened as it's initially attempting to jump to a new host species, which is while the above sequence of steps, one new host, a few new hosts, then it passes amongst them temporarily, and then finally sustained transmission. We have gone from the first step to sustained transmission instantaneously. And it takes several months, if not years, to play out. We have seen that happen in the matter of weeks. Since a good bit of time is required for all these steps to occur, viral trial and error is required for the virus to find right mutations that will allow it to prosper in a new host species. It's never known to just jump, to just magically happen all at once. But we have seen magic play out now. And so assuming that COVID emerged naturally in a matter of weeks in the middle of massive urban metropolis size of New York City, when the host population of bats was hibernating anyway, requires completely ignoring everything we know about virus transfer between species. We have to put everything aside about what we know about viruses to understand and to accept what's officially coming out of Wuhan. Please stick with me here. We're getting to the meat of all this, notably the first 3 known cases from early December with no contact with that market, the market that we were talking about where they're saying all this originated from. And roughly 1/3 of the initial exposed cohort had no direct ties to Wuhan, while the meat wet market, the original presumptive source of the virus. And in mid-February, reporting indicated that COVID-19's patient 0 has in fact no connection at all with the wet market. This is reinforced by the fact Chinese research has also concluded that COVID-19 may have begun human-to-human transmission in late November from a place other than the Hunan seafood market in Wuhan. So everyone that's blaming Trump for all this stuff and how he is saying that, yeah, this is China's fault. He's right. This is China's fault. They did not want to let anyone know what was going on. By the time it got here, we simply can't shut everything down overnight. The logistics of that is impossible. So everyone that is blaming Trump all this, they need to understand how this virus actually happened. They need to understand a little bit more about zoonotic transfer, because it seems to me they don't know anything about that. They need to learn a little bit more about what's going on. Since the discovery scientists have been unable to fully determine the zoological origins of COVID-19, it was initially thought to have passed between 3 snakes, but now it's agreed upon there's mostly bat in origin, but also ferrets, right? Let's not forget about that. This inability to derive an exact zoological source is exactly what would be expected if the virus had artificially engineered to target humans, as UNC already has. This thing was already involved in UNC research. This research has been going on for a long time. There's a lot of different links here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but it shows everything, the history of this entire thing. Please do your favor and read this. You're already home already. You're already under isolation. You're already under this quarantine. Instead of watching the latest episode of Walking Dead, please use this time to educate yourself on what is really important with this. It is not like the flu. This was engineered to be so much more. Going further here, because even mixing and matching coronavirus genomes from every known zoological virus, scientists couldn't find a possible combination that would explain those regions of the Wuhan strain genome. The Lancet muses with a mysterious animal host. It's just a mysterious animals that could still be out there. Yeah, it's just a mysterious. We don't know yet, but it's probably still out there. Let's not actually look at the actual information and where this is actually leading us. However, since they've already searched through every known possibility and been unable to find a match, other obvious explanations, and is that bioengineering accounts for the inexplicable nucleotide signature of the Wuhan strain's genome. We talked about how this has already mutated. This was already part of the virus to mutate. And viruses don't mutate that fast. Okay. This is where we get into the meat of stuff. I know that we're over an hour now, but if you're still with me, please stay with me here. The successful end result of the aforementioned bat coronavirus bioengineered research at UNC that was critiqued for being too risky in 2015 was published the following year and described the successful bioengineering of a highly virulent coronavirus derived from bats that was achieved by tinkering with the spike proteins. They were doing this in 2015. Very coincidence that we are seeing all this stuff right now. It didn't just simply evolve out of nowhere. They were messing with this for a long time, many years. In this paper, researcher 8 is listed as the Zing Lai Shi, the person that was actually working with UNC that we had talked about, who's listed as being attached to the key laboratory of special pathogens and biosafety, Wuhan Institute of Virology. Okay. It says that this person seems to have returned to Wuhan some point in 2016, specifically to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Disease Engineering Technical Research Center, since she has then appeared to, in this September 2019 paper, in the human behaviors most likely to lead to bat-borne coronavirus exposure in southern China, and also in the paper claiming that this coronavirus was bat in origin. Well, they already know they've been working with it this whole time, which was peculiarly submitted in coordination with the announcement of the outbreak. Very, very peculiar. She also appears in this pending preprint of the current outbreak in COVID-19, just a small sample of the dozens of coronavirus-related papers she published over a 3-decade career. She'd been working for this for 3 decades. This is the person to point the finger at, along with everyone that she was affiliated with. Not only does Zheng Li Shi provide a direct chain of expertise tying the already successful bioengineering of a virulent bat-based coronavirus at UNC directly to the BSF-4 virology lab in Wuhan, but back in 2014, she received $665,000 grant from N1H for the study of the ecology of bat coronaviruses and the risk of future coronavirus emergences. It's back in 2014, as well as $559,000 more from the USAID for the study entitled Emergency Pandemic Threats Predict to China. Beyond this, American funding, specifically into viral diseases, zoonotic transferring from animals to animals, which would have slipped in just before the ban. Remember we were talking about the ban that they put in that was just released back in 2017. It's all connected. Over the years, she's been received around $3 million in grants to study these zoonotic viruses from China and other countries, and has served on the editorial board of several virological research magazines. You can read that if you want. This is very interesting here. Another Chinese virologist, Xing Yigi, who we had talked about earlier, appears as the author of the 2016 UNC paper and is also attached to the lab in Wuhan. Previously in 2013, he had been the very first scientist to successfully isolate a SARS-like coronavirus from bats which targets the ACE2 receptor. Please understand they have been messing around this for the last decade, just like our present virus, the Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19 uses. And it turns out that sections of Wuhan strain's ACE2 receptors genes are unique. They're almost identical to SARS spike protein genes, despite the fact that almost none of the two coronavirus genomes are similar anywhere else at all. Beyond that, although the Wuhan strain spike protein genomes differ from SARS in 4 out of 5 most important genomic spots that determine binding to the ACE2 receptor, they surprisingly don't affect the protein spike shape. And even bigger coincidence, these 4 spots also code for the outside region of the spike that allows entry into cells and do not affect it either. All they're really trying to say is that this very peculiar evolution of this type of virus leads everyone to believe that this was actually created in a lab. There's no way it could have evolved on its own. The odds that this coincidence was bioengineered into a virus are several orders of magnitude more likely than this was randomly evolved in nature, and exactly the sort of process used to make the H5N1 bird flu airborne and highly pathogenic. We're not done. It gets even worse. Another peculiar characteristic of COVID-19 similarities to HIV. And so, although another since retracted preprint noted several key short genomic sequences in COVID-19 spike protein that look far more similar to sequences found in HIV than other coronaviruses. Please understand, when you get this virus, you're not out of the clear yet. You could have AIDS. You could have HIV. You could have the markers for HIV in your system. That's destroying your white blood cell count. Critics quickly pointed out that the similar homology didn't reach statistical significance. However, a closer look at the data reveals that there were a few small shared genomic segments, despite being physically separated from each other along each strand of DNA, all work together to code for the Wuhan strain protein spike's crucial receptor binding site, something that is highly unlikely to have happened by chance. And despite most of its protein spike being shared with SARS, these substituted segments weren't shared at all, nor were they found in any other coronavirus. One possible but likely reason for these HIV-like segments is that they were meant to be epitopes or molecular fags meant to be mark intruders for a vaccine to target, meaning the Wuhan strain was built as a monster for a specific vaccine to hunt. It is mathematically possible for this to happen in nature, maybe, but only in 10,000 bats chained to 10,000 petri dishes and given until infinity. Alternatively, this pattern could also be produced by infecting a room full of ferrets with a bespoke coronavirus and sifting through the wreckage for your genomic needle. That's more likely. This is where it gets even worse. Critics have brushed off the Wuhan strain shared homology with the HIV as statistically insignificant. However, clinical reporting indicates that the Wuhan strain may be using this shared HIV homology to attack CD4 immune cells, just like HIV does, as an unusually high percentage of patients are showing low white blood cell counts, especially the sickest ones. This pathogenicity, may well be due to the unique HIV-like genomics of the Wuhan strain, as one white paper of the LSU's professor emeritus of microbiology, immunology, and parasitology, who is also a Harvard-educated virologist with a PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics, notes. This is a smart guy, right? This is a first description of a possible immunosuppressive domain in coronaviruses. The 3 key mutations common to the known immunosuppressive domains are also in common with a sequence from the spike protein. While coronaviruses are not known for general immunosuppression for the style known by HIV-1, this does not rule out immunosuppression at the site of active infection in the lung, which would prolong and potentially worsen infection at that site. And early research has indicated that this unique region may make COVID-19 up to 1,000 times more likely to bind to human cells than SARS, which would be due to either homology or the ADE or some combination of these or other factors. Even more troubling, a peer-reviewed study noted that one particular part of the Wuhan spike protein genome was also found wasn't found in any of its relatives. It stands by its own. There is no progeny to this. And many provide a gain of function to COVID-19 for effective spreading to the human population. This was engineered to be a perfect weapon against human cells. That's it in a nutshell. and it also has a version of HIV that could very well, possibly cause problems in the future. Could it give you AIDS? I don't know. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And according to that paper, this particular type of furin cleavage site makes similar viruses more pathogenic and more neurotoxic. Additionally, this particular type of cleavage site is a hallmark for being passed through a series of animal hosts in a lab, namely ferrets. Some COVID-19 patients also showed neurologic signs such as headache, nausea, and vomiting. This paper asserts that since SARS was found heavily concentrated in the brain stems of its autopsy victims, COVID-19 is also probably crossing the blood-brain barrier and killing its victims, not just with pneumonia, but also neurologic respiratory failure. So let's conclude here. I know that it's an hour 15, but let's go ahead and conclude this. In a highly concerning turn, scientists have noted that Wuhan strain could have a striking sort of term rate of mutation, which doesn't indicate an artificial origin, but captures the unique threat posed by this coronavirus regardless of its provenance, since a faster mutation rate makes it more likely this virus can dodge testing and neutralize vaccines. That is probably one of the most dangerous things about this, that it can mutate and you can test negative but be positive. And the vaccines, we won't be able to keep up with the vaccines. So this was specifically engineered and evolved to be a monster coronavirus. This is nothing like anything we have ever seen before. Trump was right. This is nothing like anything we've ever seen before. He's saying these things because he knows this information. Those who are in the know are talking about this, and we are only left to our own devices to kind of make stuff up as we go and kind of feel our way around in the dark. I'm not saying Trump is a genius. I'm just saying that he knows more things than you know, but he's trying not to make the public too scared about this. He knows that this virus, this COVID-19, is going to be resistant against vaccines. He knows that you can get false negatives. False negatives are going to be a huge problem. Something there's already evidence for. Further concerning reports out of China that even patients who appear cured still harbor COVID-19 in their system. This is what I was reporting about a long time ago. That when you actually get better, you can get reinfected and you can still spread it. You can still have it in your system. It can still come back. Similar to the HIV. It can go into hibernation. HIV can go in hibernation. They can come back. Right? Turn to full-blown AIDS. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that this virus has so many markers of intentionality that it's hard not to look past it. One of the worst possible scenarios for COVID-19 mutation rates would be if it falls into the Goldilocks range that would allow it to form mutant viral swarms. Too many mutations will cause a virus to eventually implode. Not enough allows host immune system to catch up. And if things are just right, mutant swarms can form and spread across host populations. So we can go through so many different mutations of this virus until it destroys everything, burrowing from the host nervous systems and causing permanent neurological damage. Mutant swarms form when the virus produces mutinality, damaged copies of itself inside of a host, some of which aren't infectious but find their way into the nervous system where they burrow in, causing damage, and other that combine with complementary broken copies inside host cells to produce working infection copies of a virus. This isn't like the flu. For those people who are out there who are saying this is just like the flu, please read this entire thing. Please look at all the supporting documentation, studies, and information that backs all this stuff up. I have. I don't have 4 hours to make a 4-hour long video to go over everything. You have to do it yourself. Let's conclude this. A coronavirus spontaneous. So given the above facts, either one or two things going on here. Either a coronavirus spontaneously mutated and jumped to humans in a wet market or deep in some random bat cave, which some so happen to be 20 miles from China's only BSL-4 laboratory lab, and a virus with a usually slippery, never-before-seen genome that's evading zoological classification, that may be as much as 20 times more contagious than SARS, and whose spike protein region, which allows it to enter host cells, host a unique HIV-like signature with the concomitant excuse me, I don't know how to pronounce that word, clinical response that somehow managed to infect its patient zero who had no connection to the market and then be so fine-tuned to humans that it's gone on to create a single greatest public health crisis in Chinese history with approaching 100 million citizens locked down or quarantined, also causing Mongolia to close its border with the largest trading partner for the first time in modern history and Russia to ban Chinese citizens from entering into their country. Or, this is what happened. Or Chinese scientists failed to follow correct sanitation protocols, possibly while in a rush leading up to an international virological conference. And during their boisterous holiday season, something had been anticipated since the opening of the BSL-4 lab and has happened at least 4 times previously, and accidentally released into bioengineered Wuhan strain, likely created by scientists researching immunotherapy regimes against bat coronaviruses, who've already demonstrated that the ability to perform every step necessary to bioengineer the Wuhan strain COVID-19 into their population. And now the world, as would be expected, this virus appears to have been bioengineered at the spike protein genes, which have already been done at UNC a long time ago to make an extraordinary virulent coronavirus. China's efforts to prevent the full story about what's going on from getting out because they want the scales to be even since they are now facing a severe pandemic and depopulation event. No facts point to this. No facts point against this conclusion. That's where we are, folks. I know that it took a long time to get there. If you're still with me, I appreciate that. These videos are long, but we need to understand where this comes from. We need to understand why the Chinese, why they're doing what they're doing right now, and why we are so entrenched in this idea of not talking bad about China, not saying the Chinese virus, not saying the Wuhan Chinese virus, or whatever you want to call it right now. We're trying to be as politically correct as possible. Well, I call BS on that. We have plenty of information that points directly in favor of the idea that this was all a type of humongous error. And the fact that we were actually messing with these types of dangerous types of diseases that have to be in a level 4 lab in Wuhan, China, and the amount of the amount and lack of oversight from the Chinese government when it comes to these types of viruses and how they have spread like nuclear, like napalm throughout the entire population is it's unbelievable. But that's where we are at right now. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.